money, and it'll be largely voluntary. But the second option, and this is what we need to be concerned about, is an international tribunal of climate justice established to address cases of non-compliance of the commitments of developed countries, and that needs to have an indicated list of consequences, they say. Now, still, these are two options. It could go either way, right? But when you look at what they say to flesh this out, under option number one, they say the committee shall consist of blank number of members. It's not really defined. And they say that they may consider issues on the basis of this or that. But the second option, which is an enforcement option, an enforcement compliance, they're very detailed about that. They don't question how many members they have. They say they're going to have 12 members. They're going to be equally represented the least developed countries with the most developed countries, and there will be a 2/3 majority to make adjustments to these agreements. They say they'll have two separate branches, an enforcement branch for developed countries and a facilitative branch for developing countries. In other words, we will get the stick and they will get the carrot, and we will pay for the technology that is given to them, and we will pay in terms of the loss of income and production capability, as well as a transfer of wealth and technology. And this is precisely what we saw this last weekend. Latin American countries are saying, here's the bill that we're presenting to you, the rich, at this climate summit. Shut down your industries and do this in terms of climate justice. We already saw what Obama did in a previous meeting with China. He agreed to cutbacks in our emissions and allowed China to continue to grow until 2030. The result of that will be that by 2030, China will have 50% of global emissions. The U.S. will be reduced to 5%. So this is about shutting down our economy. It's about that and nothing less. And the people who think that the government really cares about the environment need to look at the way the government has responded to any discussion of the issue. Now, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to talk to Jakari Jackson about some issues on the news. And at the next segment after that, we're going to have an interview with the filmmaker J.D. King. And he tackles this environmental issue direct head-on, going after the icon of the global warming industry, the polar bear floating on a melted ice floe. We'll be right back.
You ISIS people threatening us, hey, we're not a French newspaper, okay? We got people that have taken your asses out in this building right now. We're armed to the teeth, and we're not scared. You got that, you sons of bitches? This is Texas. You want to threaten me, you can go straight to hell. You understand that?
Never water yourself down just because someone can't handle you at 100 proof. It's the Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.
Shane Steiner's involvement with InfoWarsLife.com truly happened in an organic way. I went to high school with Shane, his brother, knew his parents well, and he was visiting the office once, hadn't been to the office in years, and said, wow, I notice you're making and selling supplements. Do these really work? Because I've tried a lot of supplements as a workout enthusiast, and I really think most of them are hype. And I said, here, take some home, try it. Well, a few weeks later, he came in blown away and said, I want to buy 3 boxes of this stuff to give my friends and family. It's simply amazing. He said, why does it work so well? And I said, listen, go to InfoWarsLife.com, watch the informational videos with Dr. Group and others. They understand how it all works. I know that it works for me. That's all I understand. The science, the facts, the research, people's testimonials, they're all on InfoWarsLife.com. You can check it out for yourself.
I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to push myself and work out harder. And that led to me being able to come out and do stuff like the barefooting and the surfing and stuff like that, which I would have never done. I never would have done that 2 years ago.
Shane has said over and over again, more than just libido and energy, it made him want to get into the gym more. It made him want to get in better shape. And believe me, the Steiners have amazing genetics. His brother is a world champion steer wrestler. His dad, Bobby Steiner, is a famous world champion bull rider. They've got natural genetics. But when you added this to the mix, in Shane's own words, it took him to the next level. Shane noticed the mental clarity. Bobby was able to work out longer and gain muscle mass. He's already completely shredded. I gotta admit, for me, the biggest effect has been libido. Now, I've never claimed to have a body like some beach model, but back when I was 20, 22 years old and worked out every day, I looked great. But over the years, and being married, having 3 kids, working 18 hours a day, I gained basically 100 pounds. And it's been a long process losing that weight in the last 4 years. But if you look at the photos and the videos of what I looked like 4 or 5 years ago versus today, the results are dramatic. I'd already cleaned up my diet. I was working out hard, but I'd only lost about 20 pounds. It was adding the other key ingredients from InfoWarsLife.com that helped me personally go to the next level and shed another 35 pounds.
This has actually made me feel so good that here lately, about a year ago, I started training jiu-jitsu, and that kind of led to doing some boxing and kickboxing. I mean, it's amazing that 2 years ago, I was on the couch and couldn't even tie my shoes, and now I'm training with MMA fighters and just doing stuff that I never thought that I would be doing ever again. So Super Male Vitality has allowed me to do some amazing things, and if it has those kind of effects for me, I know that it will do great things for you. So just try Super Male Vitality. I promise you, you'll love it.
And finally, let's look at Anthony Gucciardi, InfoWars.com reporter. He also works with Dr. Group and others, helping develop the newest, most cutting-edge, high-quality supplements. Let's take a look at what happened when he tried to barefoot ski for the first time with the Steiners. And remember, we're not making fun of him. He had the will to get in the arena, and he's lost more than 10 pounds in the last few years of fat and gained more than 10 pounds of muscle. And Anthony chalks it up to Super Male Vitality as well. Bottom line, folks, you want to discover the power of Super Male Vitality and Super Female Vitality for yourself by visiting InfoWarsLife.com today or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Well, of course, as we've been talking about the climate conference going on in Paris, we're going to have an interview with a filmmaker about a groundbreaking film that he has showing the false narrative of polar bears disappearing and disappearing ice caps. That's going to be in the next segment. Jakari Jackson is joining us now with some other news, because there are other things that are happening besides the global takeover of everything.
Yeah, besides these guys flying around in their private jets with their limos and all this stuff, renting out entire floors and hotels to serve their aides and all this stuff. But they want to come and tell you about your climate. But there are other things going on in the world right now, David, such as the DEA. We know the war on drugs, or as many people say, the failed war on drugs. And when you think about these gangster movies, Dave, the old Prohibition movies, these guys riding around with the machine guns, Tommy guns, shooting people dead in the street. And people, they look back at that period in history. They can watch these things on the History Channel, and they say, that's so barbaric. How could people possibly allow this to happen in the United States of America, that we would outlaw something to the point where we'd have violent crime running rampant in the streets, black markets created. Meanwhile, we have the American drug war going on right now.
Same thing, drive-by shooting, same motivation.
Yeah, the exact same things that are going on right now. And now we have the article, the DEA has failed to eradicate marijuana. Some members of Congress want it to stop trying. And this documents how the DEA spends about $18 million in efforts with state and local authorities to pull up marijuana plants being grown indoors and outdoors. In the mid-2000s, it became clear that the overwhelming majority of marijuana plants netted by the program were actually ditchweed, a wild, non-cultivated, non-psychoactive cousin of marijuana. So a lot of these marijuana plants they're actually digging up, David, aren't even marijuana. They resemble marijuana. They don't have any of the effects of marijuana, but meanwhile, these guys...
Sounds like the solution to climate change. You know, we'll go out and we'll do something, we'll pay ourselves, we'll create this massive bureaucracy.
Yes.
We'll transfer money from the taxpayer to this bureaucracy. We'll take away your freedoms, we'll take away the rule of law, we'll take away sovereignty. And yet we'll declare victory, you know, because we're picking up these
yeah, because we're picking up these weeds. And some estimates are saying that the DEA spends about $4.20, $4.20 on the marijuana plants for each one. And in other estimates, they say some of them cost about $60 per plant to uproot. So that's after they get all the guys and the MRAPs and the heavy arm to go out there and do all these things. They're estimating that it can cost about as much as $60 per plant, assuming they even find real ones.
Absolutely insane. And you know, there's this article that came out this week in Jakari about this college student right here in Texas, College Station, Texas A&M. she was 19 and she got a lot of publicity because they took her mugshot and she's smiling, and it's like, she's facing some really serious charges. Why is she smiling? I mean, she was there for heavy quantity of drugs, a wide variety of drugs. She had cocaine, marijuana, ecstasy, meth in her apartment in large quantities. She had a drug price list, handwritten, 2 digital scales. They had packaging material. They had emails showing that she's dealing. But she's smiling. Now we know why she's smiling. Her father is a big wig in the DEA. Oh. And I think it really shows the bankruptcy of this whole approach. They say in this article from the Daily Mail, they say her father, Bill Furray, is a hardened, no-nonsense law enforcer who sees drug dealers as the scourge of society. Now, I would say the scourge of society is the failure of families, the failure of personal responsibility, the failure of any kind of morality or rule of law. All of those things are being wiped out by our society, by our government, especially by the war on drugs. And I think it shows the futility of a father who is out there arresting people, using the hammer of law enforcement to try to solve a problem that is essentially one that is spiritual in nature, that has to do with the breakdown of society, but they're going to do it with law enforcement, with prohibition, and all that does is make the problem worse. But she may be smiling because she knows Daddy's going to make sure that she doesn't go to jail for an extended period of time, because that's the other thing that we see, how the people who are at the top of this this empire that we have built basically just run right through these laws. They don't get
absolutely. Just I believe it was one of Jeb's daughters, one of the Bush girls, who got caught with whatever drug it was. And I'm not saying lock her away and throw away the key, but Jeb, if you're going to let your daughter off, why don't you release some of these people from prisons?
It was prescription drugs.
Yeah,
it wasn't even the other stuff. It was prescription drug abuse. And at the time they pointed that out, Jakari, he really came down on the Miami paper that pointed this out. But then he brings it up himself as a badge of compassion because he shares your pain. No, he doesn't share your pain, because his daughter's life was not destroyed.
Yes.
She wasn't sent to jail for a very long period of time. They caught her with prescription drugs, and then while she was under treatment or something, then they caught her with, I think, cocaine or something. I'm not sure of the details of that. But nevertheless, she's caught with multiple issues like that. And we've seen all these politicians like Carly Fiorina, using her stepdaughter, who was a grown woman at the time, who died from alcohol and abuse of prescription drugs, using that to say, no, for marijuana, we need to shut this down. And while we talk about Chris Christie, he also used a friend of his. And he got an endorsement this weekend from the New Hampshire major newspaper, the New Hampshire Union. And this is what they said. I thought it was very funny, because I can't help but make fun of Chris Christie on a personal level, because he's such an authoritarian creep. I can't stand this guy because he's constantly pushing for the war on drugs. They said it was an enormous win for Christie, who has campaigned heavily in New Hampshire. And I would add that he is sagging behind in 7th place. But they endorsed him, and I guess that's kind of an endorsement for them. But we don't endorse Chris Christie or his policies. He's the guy who says that he's going to shut things down in Colorado, where the voters said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to do this insanity for marijuana. They're still going to continue the insanity and the illegal war on drugs for other drugs, but not for marijuana. And he says, well, we're going to make sure that you don't have that right. See, the reality, Jakari, that we've been talking about all along is that when you're talking about alcohol prohibition, as you began this discussion, that was done with an amendment to the Constitution in recognition that there is no inherent power in the Constitution, no specifically delegated power in the Constitution to the federal government to handle any of that.
Yes.
It's a state issue. If the states wanted to ban alcohol, they could ban alcohol or marijuana or anything else. But if they say they don't want to do it, then the government really doesn't have the authority. And I think the move that we're seeing right now is not a move of compassion all of a sudden, but it's the fact that in these various states, people have stood up to the government with state nullification and said, no, you're not going to have a war on marijuana here. We're sick of this nonsense. And they're either going to have to back down and say, all right, yeah, we're going to make marijuana legal everywhere, or it's going to be revealed that the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah, they don't want that to be shown, because just like we have this article here, David, talking about the rise of synthetic drugs, they have the drug called Spice, which is making people sick all over California. And it says this is the 2nd weekend in a row that police officers saw multiple overdoses in the area. This is in San Diego, bringing the total number of those sickened to around 30 people. So basically they have these synthetic drugs, Spice, it also goes by the name K2, Joker, Black Mamba, Kush, Chronic, and things of the sort. Now, it is illegal in California, but it is legal in other places. So people say, well, you won't give us the real weed, so we'll go out and smoke fake weed that makes us sick.
Yeah, or skunk. We saw the article that said that skunk destroys white brain matter. And I tweeted out, black brain matter matters.
Yes.
But the bottom line is people need to understand these synthetic and concentrated forms of